fall of the Bastille. Is it a revolt? Asks the king. No, sire, he is answered. It is a revolution. The victory at the Bastille marks a crucial moment in French history. The people had defied their king and won. There would be no turning back. As a symbol of the defeat of oppression, the people dig with their bare hands and tear apart the Bastille brick by brick. They are beginning to dismantle the past itself.
The French went about the process of tearing down the Bastille as quickly as they could. In the absence of powerful explosives, this was done very painstakingly, but with a tremendous amount of vigor. And the bricks were given away, sold as emblems of the demolition of despotism.
The energy of the streets invigorates the National Assembly. A revolutionary manifesto is adopted, called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. It calls for an end to tyranny and for a representative government to protect the freedom and equality of all men.
The Declaration of the Rights of Man was a declaration promulgated by the National Assembly, which said in its text that the sovereignty belongs to the people, it belongs to the nation. The king is nowhere mentioned in this document. Therefore, by issuing this document, the Assembly was effectively seizing power for itself.
With the new National Assembly as their voice, the people of France set out to change the very fabric of their world. They demand a constitutional monarchy, equal rights for all men, and justice under reasonable laws. Robespierre demands increased freedom for the press, which had been muzzled under the old regime. The resulting free press is spearheaded by L'Ami du Peuple, the people's friend. A fiery newspaper full of vitriolic rants and provocation, it is the brainchild of a former doctor, Jean-Paul Marat. A controversial author of tracts on science and philosophy, Marat was rejected by France's Académie des Sciences. It left an enduring bitterness against the French establishment. Later, whilst on the run from royalist police, Marat contracted a painful skin disease that left him confined for long periods to a medicinal bath. Marat finds in the revolution the perfect outlet for his venom.
Jean-Paul Marat was just one of these professional malcontents. And unfortunately, revolutions do offer opportunity to professional malcontents. Marat took all of that bile, all of that resentment, and funneled it into a newspaper that became extraordinarily successful, L'Ami du Peuple.
Marat was a man possessed of extraordinary anger. You just have to read the pages of his newspaper, The Friend of the People, to see this. In every issue, he displays a complete paranoid mentality. He sees plots everywhere. Everybody is plotting against the revolution, and the answer is very simple for him. The answer is blood. The answer is heads.
Marat loathes the monarchy's extravagance amidst the poverty gripping France, and needs only the slightest rumor to lambast the king and queen in his newspaper. On the 2nd of October, 1789, his anger boils over. Word reaches Paris that the king has thrown a party at Versailles, that the king's soldiers threw the new tricolour flag, symbol of the revolution, to the ground and trampled it underfoot. Marat is enraged. He reports the insult in his paper, just as a new threat breaks. The king has again ordered troops to move into position around Paris. With victory at the Bastille still fresh in their minds, Marat frantically urges the people of Paris to take action again. It's time to open your eyes, he tells them. Shake yourselves out of your torpor. Wake up. Once more, wake up. The 5th of October. Dawn breaks to the furious ringing of bells. Women gather to protest against the shortage of bread. And now fear of the approaching troops mixes with fury at the news of the king's offensive party. Soon thousands are marching to Versailles, pikes in hand. The women are taking their grievances to the king.
The core of the crowd was made up of the famous poissardes, the fearsome fish ladies of the central markets, who were known for their brawny build and their fearlessness. They were equipped with large knives for scaling fish. They were hugely muscular because they carted boxes. You didn't want to tangle with these ladies.
These are women of the poor quarters. These are poor women which are affected by the increased price of bread, by the scarcity of products, who suddenly begin to realize that they must act. It is quite extraordinary how these ordinary women, probably most of them couldn't even write their name, suddenly act as the protagonists of the historical process.
At the palace, word of the approaching crowd of angry women reaches the Queen's chambers. Legend has it that it is at this moment that Marie Antoinette utters the most famous line she never said.
Marie Antoinette did not say, "Let them eat cake." That is a myth. Marie Antoinette, unfortunately, probably never even noticed the poor people of her country long enough to make such a statement.
As the mob of women gather outside the gates, Louis understands the revolution can no longer be ignored. It is being brought to his front door. He agrees to sign the Declaration of the Rights of Man, but the crowd continues to grow throughout the night. By morning, 20,000 people are camped outside the palace. To close the centuries of distance between the king and his subjects, the angry mass demands that the king and queen move to Paris. Typically, Louis prevaricates. His hesitation would provoke a fury in the crowd and put the lives of the royal family in grave danger.
When they don't get instant compliance with what they want, it really looks as if they're going to massacre the Queen.
The mob break into the palace, screaming for the blood of the Queen. They massacre guards, decapitate them, and stick their heads on pikes.
They were like banshees screaming throughout the palace, "Give me her entrails, give me her head, I want a leg, I want an arm." I think that they had grown so frenzied that if they had encountered her, they probably would have torn her to pieces.
Terrified for her life, Marie Antoinette escapes to Louis's apartments, only moments before the women break into her chambers and tear her bed to shreds. The king and queen are now trapped by the mob and at its mercy.
The only way the women can be pacified is for the royal family to agree to go to Paris, because once they're there in Paris, then they can ultimately be made to do what the people of Paris want.
They march 60,000 strong, leaving Versailles with carts and wagons filled with flour from the royal storehouses.
The king and the queen were forced to go to Paris with the heads of their guards who had been massacred in the chateau. Their heads had been cut off with knives. This was a moment of completely unbridled violence. These heads were made up with makeup and paraded in front of the carriage with the king and queen following.
The king and queen are installed in the Tuileries Palace. They will never see Versailles again.
Once the royal family moves to Paris, they are the prisoners of Paris. They know it. Everybody else knows it. There are great limits to what they can do or even dream of doing. They are the prisoners of the capital city, there's no doubt.
Versailles is abandoned, and the Assembly moves to Paris. Ultimate power now seems to rest with the Paris mob. France will have a new democracy, new laws, and a new terrifying symbol of the revolution will make its first appearance: the guillotine. May 1791. It is nearly 2 years since the royal family and the National Assembly have moved to Paris. Robespierre speaks often at the Assembly and at the Jacobin Club, a debating society named after the former Jacobin monastery where they gather. Words take on a new power in the revolution, and Robespierre speaks with an unfailing moral compass. He is an impassioned advocate for the people of France. He soon earns the nickname, the Incorruptible. France is now a constitutional monarchy, and the king forced to share power with the revolutionaries in the assembly. But it seems Louis's share is growing smaller by the day, as he is forced to sign law after law, diminishing his own power, and that of the other emblem of feudal France, the Catholic Church. Louis decides the time has come to leave France and mount a campaign to reclaim his kingdom.
Louis had decided by 1791 that he needed to regain control of his country, and he knew he could only do that with the help of a foreign army. So the idea was to make a break from the Tuileries Palace and to head for the nearest border.
The 21st of June, 1791. The king and queen disguise themselves as servants and, under cover of darkness, slip out from under the watchful eye of Paris. It is past midnight when they arrive in the small town of Varennes, 100 miles east of Paris. They are close to the border of Austria, safety just a few miles away. But they are about to run out of luck. Rumors of the entourage's movements have preceded them to Varennes. A town official stops the carriage and asks for their passports. The official's suspicions are confirmed. It is the signature of the king himself. The townsman is overcome at the sight of his king. But revolutionary guards nearby show no reverence for the fleeing royals.
He keeps hoping that people will recognize him and there will be a kind of rebellion in his favor. And much to his horror and surprise, they are not ecstatic to recognize him. They see him as escaping, and basically he's arrested and taken back to Paris.
The idea that the monarch had tried to abandon his people was psychologically catastrophic. That event really broke the bond between Louis and his subjects. Now they had not only a king who was superfluous, they had a king who was obviously a traitor as well.
With the royal family proving themselves enemies of the revolution, the little control over events that Louis still held is gone. At the heart of the revolutionary government is Robespierre. He shines at the podium, calling for changes of every kind. He demands universal suffrage and an end to slavery in the French West Indies. Most passionately, he rails against the death penalty. In the new age of enlightenment, Robespierre wants to discard all remnants of the medieval past. France had inherited a macabre repertoire of execution methods from its medieval past. Cruel, torturous deaths by drawing and quartering, hanging, drowning, and burning.
Well, under the old regime, there was a whole panoply of very gruesome punishments, and decapitation was punishment reserved for the nobility. And one of the things that the revolution wanted from the start was to have everybody equal in death. They wanted symbolically to have the same punishment available for anyone.
Despite Robespierre's opposition, a new killing machine takes center stage in Paris. Dr. Joseph Guillotin, a physician, proposes a new decapitation machine. Beheading, he argues, is a humane method of execution. A swift slice of steel delivers a quick, painless death. Dr. Guillotin describes his new device to the assembly. The mechanism falls like thunder. The head flies off. Blood spurts. The man is no more.